So I wasn't really told if you have a hard out or anything like that, if you have any more press after me. I was going to shoot for like a half hour, but I mean...
we can talk as long as you want, unless I become irritated, I guess. But no, I don't. I only have this right now.
So it's kind of funny you bring that up. And I'm already recording, so this is just kind of rolling into it. So, I know Josh Schroeder, and I've been hitting him up the last couple of days since I got the record, and was kind of just trying to get some information from him. And between him and Amy and like Alfonso, a mutual friend of ours, and our friend Rodney that I think you've known for a long time, I have been so fucking nervous to do this because I know that you don't do a lot of press, you don't really give a fuck about it, and so it kind of turns into this thing the few times that you've done some long form interviews like this, that it just kind of seems like, everyone wants to ask the same fucking questions, where if you kind of do just a little bit of digging, you'd be able to find the answers to those. And it just kind of also felt disingenuous to try to be like, all right, here's the pitch for the new record coming out, because it doesn't seem like it's really like a thing you are all about either, because it just, from what I've seen and read, it just kind of seems like you're more of like, I made the fucking record and you can hear it. And that's what I think about it. So,
we would be in a lot better financial positions if we were better salesmen or better marketers. So we'll drop a whole record and post one thing about it.
Yeah. So as a result, it's very much been for me. Initially, I wrote down probably hundreds of different questions and trying to find a narrative within there. And I just kind of kept coming back to the idea of, I think it would just be better to have kind of a conversation based around some of the things, living here in Michigan myself, and having seen the band for, kind of somewhat around the beginning, of just kind of having you answer some questions that I've always kind of had, and kind of seeing where it goes. So I would assume you're fine with that based on spending all day listening to the Gunncast today.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, you wouldn't. So you're already off to a bad start, soured palate already.
No,
but yeah, we can do whatever you want, man. We can try to go through as much stuff as you have. I don't avoid things like this because there's no way to kind of screen for integrity. So I just do mathematical, quantitative reasoning where just do less than, that's the answer. It's not think more about it or have any type of facilities set up to screen them. It's just don't do them.
I actually kind of feel like in the day and age now where there's so much oversaturation of, the rollout for a record, or even because of the social media world we live in, where like so much about anybody at any given time that it almost becomes not necessary like to do half of these, because it's like I can post and probably reach more people who are directly wanting to know what's going on with me or what music is getting ready to come out than this platform will. But I think that's the thing, is journalism or podcast people or whatever feel that we have some kind of something to offer. And more oftentimes than not, the whole crux of this really, when I started, it was just to have conversations with people that I found interesting. So,
yeah, I always have a hard time validating or justifying anything that we do, which is why, again, we don't do a lot. Because I got to really feel good about something to do it. And if I don't, then I would just rather not do it, because I just feel like I'm not offering anything to the world, I guess, And I know I'll fall out of lieu with it as well if I don't sincerely care about it. So I don't really do too many things that I don't care about or don't. Yeah, I don't know. Even in life.
So something in listening back to what so far is the last episode of your podcast, you bring up something that, you are someone who will read or watch something if someone basically recommends it just kind of out of curiosity to see what it's about. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of when my wife and I were traveling somewhere. She was watching a TED Talk on the screen and had me listen to it and was like, "Oh, this is you." And basically the TED Talk, and I wish I could remember who it is. I should have looked it up beforehand, but she talks about this concept of being a multipotentialite, where essentially we grow up and we're told, or we're asked, I should say, what do you want to be? Singularly, as children, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
And that concept is actually kind of damaging, because it makes you not ever think of, well, I could be this, and these things. I'm more multifaceted into a lot of different things that interest me as a person, because we're not one-dimensional. And it kind of has made me wonder, after hearing you kind of say, that you are a curious person in general, would you maybe agree with this concept of being like that some people, I should say, have the ability to be multi-potentialites and exceed and excel in different facets? But adversely, do you think maybe this mentality is why you are so diverse with your music, not only with King or Yavid, I'm sorry, but maybe whatever else you've done that you haven't released yet?
Yeah, I think, like most things that we put on kids, it is damaging. I would be hard pressed to find something that wasn't actually, so yeah, that's just one of those things. Most people around here, I was thinking when you said it, young people around me kind of give the same equal asinine answer to the asinine question, and they don't even have a singular occupation or career, whatever you may call it. They just say successful. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, you're going to ask me a stupid question, I'm going to give you a stupid answer. I just want to be successful. That doesn't mean anything, but it's kind of appropriate because neither does the question. But yeah, it's always been like that. I think sometimes people have a hard time grasping it because either they aren't like that, or they're not as curious, I guess. I think also, I don't know if I ever talked about this on there, but I think interesting people are interested in things. A lot of people, not in a self-obsessed or egotistical way, but it seems that those that are interesting or have some things going on, they tend to also be very interested in what it is going on around them, or with other people, or anything, So, yeah, I've always been curious about everything, even things I don't like, even things that aren't going to help me in the future, even things that might be bad for me, things that don't necessarily. And I try to make sure nothing leaves a bad taste in my mouth either. If I have a bad experience or something, I can't stand the Yelp review ideology where you go online and you read one person's bad time, and you never stop to think to yourself, when was the last time I had a really good time and left a good review?
Absolutely.
The Yelp don't matter when 100% of the people are leaving reviews because of their bad time. It's not necessarily a good pool, and that's how I feel about everything in life. I think it's just rigged. Yeah, strangely. The question, I don't know how to answer the question. Music was like a thing that I liked, and I started doing the rap thing before being a musician because it was no barrier of entry. Like me and Josh always say, no one in the hood's playing hockey because pads are probably $1,000, and you have to have transportation and shit. But like, people are playing basketball, or in South America, or in over there they play football or soccer or whatever. Because all you need is just a ball, and that was kind of like writing rap and poetry, whatever. Just writing, you need a pencil, you get those, not too difficult to come by a pencil, or not, because you don't actually have to write it down. And then you have to have things. To me, a band was the hockey version of that. You have to get a $500 guitar or whatever, or $200 guitar, or a few $100 amp, but you're just sitting there like, what the fuck is all this shit for, kind of thing. So when I went back to it, it was almost like going backwards. Didn't really make any sense, and people are kind of like, oh, he's rapping now. But anyone here knows that I was doing that before that. But it doesn't really matter what people know. Although if you listen to the thing, I do touch on the idea that we as a group are bad for our own brand, because the more we expose, the more like counterculture that it is, which is pretty funny because it's counter our own culture. But yeah, I said it a few times as well. We know what works with King, and we can do it, and we can make full albums of it, and it'll probably be much more well received than if we go in there and start playing with things we've never done. And I don't think people can wrap their heads around that idea, because even people that say what I just said, you pragmatically in practice, it's not true. Every band says the same thing after every time they release a new album. It's the heaviest, back to the basic, darkest. This is the heaviest, darkest, and it's never the heaviest. It's never the darkest. It's actually always the shittiest. And if that were the case, why does everything suck? Why does everyone suck, and why are there no good records? If you're doing your heaviest, darkest, back to the whatever, well, first off, you're just running in place, which is what the new song's about. But it's not true. That's why the industry is a joke, and no one is getting anywhere. And it's essentially like a quicksand industry.
I think something that's kind of always interested me, and there's not been a ton of opportunity for me to kind of talk a whole lot about rap or hip hop on this podcast. We are labeled a predominantly metal hardcore podcast, even though I mean, truth be told, and I've been talking about it quite a bit on our live cast we've been doing, but honestly, if we went off of album of the year based on what I've listened to the most this year, it's probably going to be TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool. And I keep finding things in that record, from a production standpoint, from some of the enunciations of words that I don't know why they got broken up that way. There's just something about it that keeps me coming back. And in some instances too, with like Janet Jackson, with the era, where Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were still producing a lot of stuff, not only for her, but just kind of the sounds as a whole, it just kind of reminds me of maybe a simpler time in music, maybe as a fan, or I guess more to the point as a consumer of these things. But as I've gotten older, I just kind of find new things in it that keep me coming back. But something, that I think is kind of interesting, in a career that I've always kind of admired, and I know it's a more popular person, but, Jay-Z, I think, is someone that's really been interesting, because there is the first couple of records, he put out, Reasonable Doubt, Volume 1, Volume 2, and it's very much about the come-up. Yeah. Then you kind of got the Black Album, you have the Blueprint, and it's more about kind of shifting from being a street hustler to being a hustler in all avenues of your life, to now, over the last handful of records, especially this last one, it's more about being a man. It's more about growing up and understanding who you are, looking back, and kind of being able to maybe pass tribal knowledge to those who are listening. And I think in a career, he is one of the few that has traversed and aged really well. and not just been the dude who for 9 albums over a 20-year career is like still fucking talking about, you know, the come up. And it's like, well, either the come up ain't never happening for you, or you need to change some shit or something. But like, he is one of the few that I've really seen kind of grow as at least as a lyricist. You know, I could go on with Kanye and what he's done more from a production standpoint. But it's one of those that I think that's one of the few careers I've really seen where someone has grown, maybe not how most people would look at it. And I feel like that's kind of what you guys have been doing is, you know, like I said, I remember going to SYS Fest. Don't remember what year that was. I think it was like 07 or something. And I was actually buying a shirt from Josh, or a hoodie from Josh, and you guys were playing after them. And I think, I don't remember what happened. I don't remember if you just kicked over the PA in front of you or whatever, but I remember something happening, and I was just like, oh, what the fuck's happening over there? I was like, King, you know, getting in trouble, and he was like, wouldn't be a King show if it wasn't. And I was like, eh. And then we just went back to what we were doing. Yeah. And I think that was kind of the nucleus of you guys working together. But I know that from being kind of a fan of you and the band around that era and seeing where you guys have gone, especially on this new record, I feel like this new record is kind of a more fully realized you guys. I think the production kind of is meeting the intensity and what you guys have been trying to do. I mean, you've said it yourself a few times in other interviews that some of the stuff before you felt is a little clunky. It wasn't so cohesive from start to finish and giving a full-on presentation of what you want. And I feel like this record is really one of the first examples where I think this is the first fully realized King album from start to finish, and I think is going to really surprise a lot of people.
No, thanks. I think that's kind of cool to hear. It's cool because, not because I like when people agree with me, but it seems genuine, not like I suspect you as being disingenuous, but it seems like something you couldn't just throw out there, I guess, without understanding what it is, which sounds funny for me to say, but I feel the same way about it too, I think. It was as if we were some type of unskilled chefs creating a dish that was above our pay grade in the past. And it seems like this one is not perfect. It's not our magnum opus, but it is our best effort to blend those ingredients together, I guess, and make something new and interesting, you know. I had a real problem with all the things that we wanted to do, and I have hundreds of songs, and they're all good, but it's really hard to get on top of this thing that I have in my imagination that isn't really explainable, I guess. Ineffable would be the word to describe. I'll know it maybe when I hear it, but I just keep trying to chase it, and I haven't got there yet. But each one gets closer, and this is the closest to it that I feel like we've come. So I think it is the most cohesive amalgamation of things that we've done in the past. Instead of having something like this type of thing or that type of thing, it is every song is everything, you know? So you get tastes of everything that we kind of have played with in the past. You get tastes of that in every song, you know. That makes sense. Kind of what you were saying. I think you said it better, but that was kind of how I felt about the whole piece, you know, itself too.
Something you have said previously on, and I keep referencing the podcast that you did, the Gunn cast. Like I said, I've been listening to it all day just to try to find maybe answers to questions I had, so I didn't have to ask you something where there already is an answer as articulate or as best as it can be from you straight from the source. Something you had kind of said is you know, because I always find it's interesting when an artist or a band or whatever puts a record together when they know it's done. And something you had kind of said was that you don't necessarily know when it's done. It's something that you feel inside. Like you're like, this collection of songs, I feel like this is what this album is going to be, or this collection is going to be, because it changes who I am when I'm done. And like, that's kind of what signifies that the experience is complete.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me a little bit of almost like a chrysalis of sorts. Like, do you feel like you kind of go through that experience where it's almost, you know, kind of a moth turning into, or a caterpillar turning into a butterfly kind of effect, where you start off as one thing and then because of the process, it has morphed you into now this other, I won't say another being, but basically someone else entirely because of the process of either getting out what you do on the record vocally, lyrically, or just the process of actually creating and putting out when working with Josh and everybody else. Is that kind of a fair assessment, or?
Yeah, I think you could explain it a bunch of different ways, but I think they're all the same. So the really short answer would be knowing when it's done is like you feel that it's done. But the chrysalis thing works as well. They're all the same way of saying that I guess it's just done to me. Me and Josh made this whole thing just us. And the last one as well. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the idea, which I talk about constantly, which you probably heard me talk about, in the idea of music, because it's such a bullshit industry. As far as when something works, you just point to the reasons why it worked, and those are only the ones that you can see. But how to basically find out if that's bullshit, which is something I've talked about before as well, is you can point to other things that did the same thing and didn't work. So that's almost like proof of that wasn't it. You're misidentifying some things here. But I say that to say anyone is going to think the record's done when it's out because it's done and that's all you have. Like you're not a guy that goes to a restaurant and gets to go sit in the kitchen and see if, you know, it's really as good as you thought it was on the back end than it is when it comes out on the plate. So knowing it's done is just, it means something to me that I guess it might not mean to other people. I'm over it could be knowing it's done, but that's not as poetic as what you said, as far as crystallizing. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. It's due. All of these are knowing that it's done. And I try not to put any of those things around me, you know. Our stuff's never due. Our stuff is never, all those people that sit around people saying shit, we don't have those, you know. So knowing it's done just means me and Josh say that it's done. And it usually comes with the first few days in the studio will be kind of brainstorming sessions that have nothing to do with music. And it kind of comes back to that curiosity where you talk about things that you want to achieve or things you want to try or things that you're setting out to do. And it's done is when you've done that. Sometimes we'll get somewhere and there'll be 11, 12, 13 songs, whatever it might be. And it doesn't feel like it's done. It doesn't mean it's not done. It means you haven't done what you came to do. It doesn't have anything. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to add another thing. It could mean that you didn't do what you came to do as well on the 12 or 13 or 14 that you've done. It could mean that 6 of them suck. It could mean a whole bunch of different shit. But I kind of set out each one with a whole toolbox of things that I want to do, and so is Josh, luckily. And we kind of chip away at them until we get them solved. I don't want someone to listen to this one and say that, you know, they didn't hear me do something new. And I don't think you can, because no. I did some really different things on this one that I think maybe are cool, but maybe they suck. Just trying some stuff.
I think something about this record to me that's sort of... Actually, I'll start it more at the beginning of the thought. You know, Josh is someone that is what I think when I think of what a producer is, I think it's what some of the great producers have done. You look at a Ross Robinson, you look at some of these other people who basically are able to extract the best out of the people they're working with and want to make the songs as best as they can, and that's giving their input as well as to how to make it better, other than just coming in and going, here are your songs, I'll hit record, and then whatever, I'm getting paid regardless. That there's more art to it from what he does. And so I know that Josh is one that wants to explore anything that will make the song go from good to great, because he wants greatness. What has that working relationship been like for you, to have someone who's just willing to explore any and all ideas?
Good. It's been good since the beginning. I didn't really care for him and didn't really care about meeting him at the beginning. A mutual friend had introduced us, and I didn't really... I know it's closed-minded or whatever, but I don't really care. I don't look for friends. I don't need friends. I don't need to know any more people or do anything like that. But by my estimation, this is another funny thing to say, but it's probably not true. But everyone that I encountered in that world, you know, that universe of band dude, I didn't like. So I had no interest in going and meeting more band dudes. And I just said I'd give it a try. And he seemed okay. And I didn't really care about finding a friend, or I also didn't love the person that introduced us at all. So he didn't have much rapport, but I was entertaining it again out of curiosity. And the first one was good. We had some songs and we were doing this, and he was okay. And I had a songwriting partner back then in Twerk, our drummer at the time. So I wasn't looking for one. I wasn't looking for a songwriting partner at the time. So I already had one. But as time went by, I would lose him as one. And I kind of picked up with Josh, and it was gradual though. So the first record, you know, me and Twerk were heavy-handed on writing, and on the second one, we showed some cool things, and Josh contributed in some cool ways as well, a little bit. And then on the second one, Josh kind of made his presence known a little bit more, not really forcefully, but I found that I was more attracted to what he was trying to do, his spirit, I guess, of what he was trying to do. And I was starting to be unattracted to Twerk's spirit. As a writer, not for any personal reason, but he wasn't going places that I wanted to go. He was compromised by my definition, which isn't objective at all. He was going places that I wasn't interested in. It would be like him saying, I'm going on a vacation here. It's not a place that I wanted to go. Not because it was weird or dangerous or anything. I just wasn't interested. It wasn't good to me. I don't know why. So I had leaned on some of the stuff that Josh was working on, and he was doing the same with us unknowingly at the time. Basically, when he found out that we wanted to do weird things, outside of whatever could be hammered out on a guitar and a bass guitar and drums. And then on the third one, it was just us. So it was a step-by-step thing, that we were just becoming better acquainted, and we were kind of syncing up with each other in the writing. It could have been for necessity, because I was now alone, in doing things. Obviously I have Gene, but bass, what is that? Bass is like, it's not the most, what would that be called? Yeah, I don't know what to call it, but I kind of always had that as a partner. And then as he was and he was probably fading by his own, he was having a bunch of things in life where he wanted to go a separate way too. So when I say something like he was trying to go somewhere I didn't want to go, that could have very well been not being a musician, you know what I mean? So it just came in little doses of, I was starting to sync up with Josh a bit more, and he was able to kind of take me to the edge of something, and I was able to also kind of push him to the edge of what he was thinking and expose some novelty and something to him that probably, I don't know who he works with, but I imagine I don't care to know. And he was probably getting something, whether it's good or bad, strange from me, and I was probably getting some looks from him as well. So I think it was just a complimentary kind of mutual relationship where he was showing me things because he's nothing like me and I'm nothing like him. He's a Canadian, first off, but it works in a way where he's constantly bringing new ways of looking at things into the mix, and it works. It's a good partnership, and I think it's the best one, and it was appropriate, and that's where it was going from the beginning. I don't feel at all like something's missing. People are misinformed. Every record we do is really different than that last one, and because we may change a member or whatever, people think that has something to do with it, but it doesn't. It's just because we'll never really make the same one twice, I guess. It doesn't have anything to do with so-and-so's departure, or we switched this or did that. It never has. It was always going to be whatever I said it was going to be. Not to be like that, but the input has always been very little, you know. There's always only been 2 songwriters, so it was kind of a natural thing, I guess.
It's funny, last night my co-host and I were doing a live cast thing, and we were got to talking about songwriting and how a lot of people are under the assumption that a band is more of a democracy where all 5 people will have an opinion and that's what makes the sound, quote unquote, of a band. Mm-hmm. And the more you kind of get nerdy and dig into what makes a band, and I mean, honestly, you can apply it to a lot of things. You can apply it to business, you can apply it to just about any relationship, really. There always kind of has to be a leader and a follower.
There always has to be a Steve Jobs and a Woz. There always has to be 2, I guess. A Page and a Plant. It's not one. It's a Joe Perry and a Steven Tyler. It's always 2. Sometimes it's 1, I guess, but those are unremarkable.
You know, in listening to not only your music, but I'll say more to the interviews and press and the podcast you've done, because I tend to find that I personally like to learn more about the person and where these stories are coming from or what inspired the songs and so forth, because then I think it allows me to possibly understand it a little bit more. I'm never going to be able to fully understand what it was like to grow up in the projects of Brooklyn, like, and Jay-Z raps about and stuff like that, or like Nas or any of these people. But I can take their lyrics, I can take what they've talked about in press, and I can try to put that through the lens of my own life and what I've gone through and try to find parallels. And something that's been interesting to me always is that it seems like you are just kind of a student of life. Taking in anything and everything as a learning opportunity to possibly make more informed decisions down the road, or not make hasty decisions necessarily. And it's kind of made me wonder, because you've said a couple of times in this, the music business is corrupt and shitty and all that kind of stuff. And that's no secret really to anyone who listens to a lot of these kind of podcasts and so forth. But it has made me wonder, seemingly you are a very DIY kind of person. What is something that you took away maybe as a positive experience, and have been able to apply now that you're back to being an independent artist? What is something that you learned from being in the major label system? And then I guess kind of the follow-up to it is, what is something that you took into that realm that you've seen has changed, maybe that other people have kind of taken from you, whether it be from the label side or even maybe other artists who have done things that you did that weren't the norm at the time?
The short answer would be, I'm so unaware of what everyone's doing that I don't know what they may have taken. And then another facet, kind of a side note, would be, I don't want to seem like I know what I'm talking about or claim that anyone should take my advice, because I don't think I have good advice. I hate being independent. I hate DIY. I hate administrative tasks. I hate errands. I hate phone calls, talking, conversations, interviews, interfacing of any kind. A text message, running a store that people buy merch from, naming songs, all these, playing shows, load in, pack up, stand on stage, everyone looks at you, talk between songs. I don't like any of this. So that just means I really enjoy making music, because pretty much every other thing sucks. So I don't encourage people to go that way if they're not those type of people. And I kind of did through necessity, not because I'm that kind of person. I'm not a DIY person. I actually hate it. I want to rip my skin off whenever I have to answer an email about anything. It's not enjoyable. It is actual work to me. I don't think I have a job, but I definitely think I work, because work to me is just doing things you don't enjoy, because you have to. And I don't have that attitude that I work my ass off, but I do things I don't enjoy, which is all of this. Besides creating music, which I do like. I would like to hire someone to do all of it, because I don't want to. That's the one thing that's good about the label. But it's two sides of a coin. It's kind of like politics. It's just like the lesser of two evils, you know. The people you have handling X, Y, and Z and paying X, Y, and Z, you know, it's good because you have someone paying a marketing budget for something, but it's bad to have to go through 9 people to get to why you may have spent 10 grand on a splash page on a website that you didn't know you spent, you know what I mean? And the reason why is because it's bureaucratic process. So it is the blessing and the curse. It is just as bad as it is good. There's not more good or more bad. The DIY argument's really stupid, I think, because most people making the DIY argument were on majors. So you're a fucking clown. Because your label spent millions of dollars marketing you, and then you went independent, and now you're saying everyone should go DIY. But the guy that's always been DIY, that doesn't have any major label marketing money and never did have, he will never be where you're at, and it's very unlikely for him anyway. And you're a prick for trying to kind of, I call it parroting. You know, you're just repeating what you hear because it sounds good, and also because you don't know better. And if it were challenged with anyone with 6 or 8 brain cells, you would realize that it's not true. And you really don't have any business telling everyone to go independent, because a label was once paying a bunch of money for people to know who you were. And after they paid a bunch of money so people knew who you were, you went independent and sold records to those people that they had essentially purchased. So those people suck, and I don't want to be one of those people. And there are just as many good things about being on a label as were bad, but maybe one more bad thing than good. So it was like, again, just like politics, you know, it was 51 verse 49. That was me being the type of person I am, not liking all of those things I just listed. Interfacing with people is a big deal to me, and I don't like to do it. So that is way higher on my list than what it might be on your list. It might be completely worth it to you, because it might not be the top of your things that you would rather not do list. Some people do it with ease, you know, extroverted people they get energy from that shit, but I just get weak and pissed. So it was something for me to try, and it goes back to the me and Josh question that you asked earlier. We had already done a few major label releases. I didn't want to just stay on the treadmill. It's not even anything against them. If they called me today and were like, "Want to do the next record with us?" I'd probably say yeah, just because this one wasn't with them. Not just going after novelty, but I guess just, well, tell me why and what you're thinking and what we can do, kind of thing. And if there's a new thing in front of us, then I'd be open to try it. It wasn't abandoning them. It was more just looking over here at this other thing, you know, trying to do it ourselves, seeing what that was like, seeing seeing how many headaches I could save myself, seeing how it worked, seeing if it worked, you know. It takes some balls to be on a major label, and then they offer you a check for your next album, and you just don't respond, and then go release it yourself. I think you just have to know what you want, I guess. I don't like saying things like that because they're stupid and everyone says that, but I don't know.
I feel like, to a degree, the last part of what you were just saying, I feel like is exactly the same. I don't want to say problem, because that's not the word I want to use. It's almost the same situation that Dave Chappelle found himself in. Dude gets offered $50 million to do one of the best comedy shows of the time, of the era, or ever, depending on who you ask. But he had integrity. That he knew that money came with something, and that he wasn't willing to sacrifice, as well as the expectations that come along with those kind of things. And I think it's kind of commendable that those that are able to walk away from something like that, because money is money, and it makes the world go round, unfortunately, at times. And anyone can sit there and say, "Oh, well, I would have taken it, or I would have done this," and you don't know what the fuck you would do in anybody else's situation, because you're not that person. You're not those situations or circumstances that have led all of those people there. But I do think it is commendable to be able to have some of the perceived headaches be taken away by being on a label, and you going, "Nah, fuck it, I want to see what happens if I do it on myself." Basically going all in on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's more commendable, and I think teaches you more about you in the long run than doing something I think would either compromise maybe your vision down the road, not saying you specifically, but the general, as well as if you choose to down the road deciding to sign with a label or whomever again, that maybe you'll be able to come into it going, these are the things I want, and not having to make more concessions that will compromise either your vision or yourself or whatever. So I think that's actually kind of commendable, especially in a day and age where the narrative probably is, well, they got dropped, not that you wanted to challenge yourself.
Yeah, that's all it was. I try to think of other reasons why it was, but it was, I could still call any one of them on the phone and they'll pick up. I was just talking to them earlier about this record. But yeah, no, we never had the concessions conversation. When we signed, we could do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, and they gave us a shitload of money. And they never once even told us to change a note. So there was never dream sacrifice. That doesn't even come onto the table. I think that's an old argument too. I don't know anyone whose dreams are getting ripped off. I always say this, and it's not to defend them. It's because it's Darwinism. I say on the podcast, I always love when people get ripped off, because shit needs to happen. Just like, it's not politically correct, but I like when people in life they display whatever is distasteful about them because they ostracize themselves, and that's good. So like, say the hot button topic today is like racism. When someone's racist, it's good because everyone knows to stay away from that person. If you kind of just muffle it and censor it and then like bury it or ban them or do whatever, that's bad news. That's like having an infected cut that you just kind of ignore, or having a mental trauma or something wrong with your brain that you suppress. Everyone knows how those things come out. They come out the other end crazy, and I feel like it's the same. It's like the same thing that we're kind of circling around. It's really hard to say true things, I guess, and make things clear, and because the world's not really built like that. The world is built on just reactive, triggering, enraging type of information, explicit information, nothing, no practice whatsoever. I always tell people when you're talking to someone, I think I've said this before, and they pull out their phone and start Googling, I always tell them, like, I could Google that the sky's green right now and find you 6 scientific articles that prove it. It means nothing. You know nothing. Don't refer to your phone when you're talking to me. It's bullshit, but it's kind of the nomenclature bullshit layer that everything is reverted to. I was talking to my friend about it earlier, how I think we could kind of stop using the term clickbait because it's now transcended into the atmosphere. It's not click or bait anymore. Mainstream news does it. I seen an article on ABC or CNN or something that some guy was saying that we might have to send the SWAT team into the White House because Trump's not coming out. It's just like the stupidest shit you can imagine, but it really is what people rally around and talk about over coffee in the morning. They really repeat these things. Like, we got this moronic loser now, like, claiming that he has a stuttering problem, and he throws a few kids up on the news that say he's an inspiration, and now everyone believes he's a stutterer instead of just believing he's a senile moron. It's just all, journalism, it really don't exist anymore. It's just raging kind of reactionary. There's no such thing as a fact checker. You can say whatever you want because everyone has, the 30-minute amnesia. It's ridiculous. It used to be an online thing where you could get people to click on your article if you said something outrageous, or like National Enquirer. But now it's everyone. Everyone is
everyone's a brand now, though.
Yeah. Brand. It's the same for everything, It's kind of transcended outside of the internet, and now people say it. You can hear it in conversations. You hear it in conversation form. They kind of speak in tweets and stuff, and it's like, hey man, there's a few words in there that you just said that I know you don't know the definition to. I know you're repeating that because I've never heard you use that word before. I've known you for 20 years. Just stop,
I think something that's kind of interesting that you said is, people will bring out their phone to more or less, I guess, quote unquote, prove a point. A conversation my wife and I have had several times, and something I reiterate quite a bit because, I'm 36 and I didn't always have the world's knowledge in theory, at my fingertips.
Yeah.
Something that I find interesting as I get older is actually the opposite of what you said. I tend to find people won't look at anything. They won't try to fact find themselves in either direction, whether you can find 10 articles that'll support what you say, but then also try to find 10 that don't, and then try to maybe find something that's in the middle that maybe is more of the truth between the two, forming your own ideas. My wife constantly gets on me for being on my phone quite a bit, and a lot of it is, prepping for something like this, but also just kind of being curious. Like, one day I had really bad bumblebees or something at the end of our driveway that were in our telephone pole. And I was like, is there ever a point where either they're dormant or whatever, so I can either spray them to try to get rid of them so I don't, they don't sting me or any of the children that live, nearby. And I was Googling it. And my wife was like, you're always on your phone. I was like, no, I'm actually trying to see, and learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes, well, what'd you find? I was like, well, these bees, if they are what they appear to be, don't actually sleep. They just kind of go into a very dormant, they don't move around a whole lot, but they're still moving.
Yeah.
But that's typically at night, when kind of everything is sleeping, sort of. And so that was something where I had a question, and I went and tried to find an answer. And I don't tend to see that people are willing to do that. They just go, "Oh, I had this thought," and then gone. Don't even want the knowledge.
Yeah, there's no real inquiry. That's kind of, I was a little unclear when I was saying it. Yeah, I meant to say that there is no research. They do pull out their phone, and it's the knee jerk. It's the, they read the headline, and that's it. I just don't. That's the reason why I dislike that type of thing, I guess, because it's not. Well, it's wrong. It's designed for you to click and get a reaction. So it can't be neutral in any way. It can't be unbiased in any way. That news outlet's owned by someone who owns someone who has a political opinion, who have constituents and lobbyists and all these other things. So I'm not like a person that, I think when you internalize information, you don't have to pull out your phone. And that's not to say I know everything. I just mean in physics, they have something called first principles. If you understand them, not physics or first principles, but if you understand fundamentally some things, a handful of things, you don't need to research. You know what I mean? You don't need to do any research.
I'm still talking to you. Sorry.
You're fine. Not to get on some different kind of ideas, but like the idea, I just read an article a few minutes ago. I don't know why. I guess morbid curiosity, an emphasis on the morbid. There was an article that came out that said studies show that wearing a mask, COVID, whatever, benefits the wearer just as much as the other person, because you remember the little political spin was, my mask benefits you, yours benefits me, and it's just like, you don't have to know that's bullshit by being a scientist. The mask is paper. It doesn't work one way and not the other. It works the same way both ways. There was no study that needed to be done to know that. You know what I mean? Whether you believe in whatever's going on or whatever, or the effectiveness or not, or whatever it may be. And now you hear people repeating that all around. And you're just, whenever someone has, there are terms and phrases. This is something I would probably talk about on the podcast, but I've been too depressed to do podcasts. There are taglines and like punchlines and phrases. Me and Josh were talking about this the other day, that I kind of have here and saved, like earmarked, as big red flags for when people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And it's not a complete list. I only have a few, but there are funny turn of phrases, little platitudes, little things like that, where when someone uses them, you can guarantee that they have no clue what the fuck it is they're talking about. And it's cool to kind of keep track of those. I don't know how interesting that is to you, but to me it's interesting when you can walk around with a little category of, okay, he's using that, he can't be trusted, he's been compromised. Don't listen to anything he says, because he's just borrowing shit from tastemakers that he has came across that he seem agreeable.
Well, I think the problem is now, sort of going back to the sometimes people aren't willing to have a thirst for knowledge or try to grow. I also think adversely, people are afraid to show that they don't know something or admit that they do. That's it. Actually, they're afraid to admit that they don't know something. I would rather say, I don't know this. Explain it to me, teach me, whatever, so I can learn. Or more to the point, I just don't want to I don't want to perpetuate not stupidity, but I guess that's also hand in hand with it. I just don't want to perpetuate something I heard, but I don't know anything about, just so I can be included in the conversation. I guess maybe that's a lot of it too, is I don't always feel like I needed to be included in something. If I don't fucking know it, then I have no problem either being like, I don't know, I don't care, whatever. Whatever. But yeah, so I mean that's I think part of it too, and a big part of it is I just think people aren't willing to admit that they don't know everything.
Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of courage, and it's kind of it takes a little bit of bravery, but also it's kind of like an ego check, I guess. When you say I don't know or care or kind of not being a part of the combo, that's kind of how I feel about everything in life, as far as just being in the, what would it be, the scene, or the what would this be, industry, I guess, in the industry. So I couldn't care less about being here. I'm not identifying with it at all. It's not part of my identity, and it's not who I am. It happens to be something I'm doing, but I really couldn't care less if I were a part of it, because I would be doing the same thing either way.
All right. Don't know what's going on. Apparently everything's overheating, so I'll try that again. So kind of in wrapping up, something that I've kind of wondered, having a handful of friends that are basically in the industry, being in signed bands and so forth, and kind of having been involved in them at a very young age, late teens, whatever, and thinking about how you as a person aren't fully you. There's still a lot of growing that we have to do, mentally, physically, and all that. And realizing that basically now something that you are doing for fun and to fulfill a creative itch has now become kind of a product and so forth. And you're being told that something that you were deemed very good at is now being something that you're being told isn't commercial enough or whatever, and what that does to you as a person. Given the fact that you have been doing the band and music for as long as you have, and the career that you've had, how do you think all of this has changed you? And I guess adversely, what does the band and what does being an artist mean to you now versus maybe what it meant to you when you were younger?
When I was really young, I just wanted to be rich and not be poor. And when I got a teenager, maybe, I wanted to be rich and not be poor, and people to like what I was doing. Like, what is that, validation, I guess?
Yeah.
And then as I became maybe a younger teen, I didn't care about either, because desired results, bad to have an attachment to I guess it's kind of sad to say, but I wasn't hopeful for what I wanted when I was a kid anymore when I became a teenager, because I wasn't hopeful for anything anymore. So I didn't have faith or hope, or kind of like dreams kind of dissolved, and I didn't have expectations, and I didn't have these other types of things. I still had goals, but I never woke up to the idea that this is a career or a job. I don't put myself in the category with the rest of these people. The Red Queen song is about that. This ain't me. This isn't what's going on. I'm not participating. So when you say you could hear from someone that what you're doing is not commercial enough. I guess it could ruin your life if you care. But when you care about nothing, I'm not putting all that in other people's hands, you know? I'm not leaving it up to someone else if I'm going to be able to get through the day or not. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Anything can ruin your life if you care, if you place that type of emphasis on it, but I've made it a careful point to not place emphasis on anything, which sounds sad. But again, I keep saying it, but the latest video, the song, I was having a conversation with someone and they were like, "Oh, it sounds like you're really feeling yourself." And I just say, well, the first lines of the song are, "My shitty hair and my shitty clothes. I'm from a shithole." Like, where do I start feeling myself at?
Right.
I'm basically saying, I'm not saying any of this. When it says I don't play nice to pay rent, I own all my shit. I'm just talking about these other clowns that tuck their tail between the legs because what they're doing is a career and their whole mortgage and their whole family does rely on them selling CDs or being nice to people or not getting shows canceled, And that's cool and they can continue to do that, but don't put me in that. That ain't me. I've never acted that way, and I've never presented myself as a person that is entertaining that kind of shit. That's what the song is about. It's like, yeah, you guys have your little rat race and your little world and your little universe. It's fine, but that's y'all's. It's not ever going to be mine. I don't care how successful or how much of a failure I become. I'm not going to. I'm not looking to get commended for it either, because I don't want to be commended for being this way either, because the people that feel the same way that I'm saying I feel right now, I don't like them either. They are not the same either, you know? It's kind of like, don't champion what I'm saying because I also don't like you. I don't like the other side of the coin either. I'm indifferent to either side. Does that make sense?
It does. I feel like the thing that just kind of is an interesting talking point at times is almost the fragility of what it can do to somebody when you're, like I said, you're not even necessarily sure of who you are. You're still figuring that out, and maybe you're putting stock in the wrong things, but I think ultimately it's no secret. I mean, the industry is a very, at times, horrible fucking thing that will just chew you up and spit you out and go on to the next person and have no real regard for anything. I mean, kind of not on point, but I think definitely kind of is on point, is you look at Milli Vanilli. Motherfucker killed himself because of the shame and embarrassment of them lip syncing and not writing their own music and shit. And the shame and embarrassment it's brought that dude over his short career and his life after that. That's all he was known for. But the thing we forget is there are people, real life people involved in this, and who are just trying to do the best that they can to have a life, to live a dream, to be, as you said several times on the podcast, the 1 in a million of a million at times, depending on how far you can go. And to see how it just will fuck you up like that is something that I don't think necessarily that people either want to talk about or do openly talk about. And I think it is something that you have throughout your career and in the press you've done. And so it just kind of was one of those things to me where, you know, I do, and maybe it's because I've been, you know, and I know you're not, you know, big on social media, but something that's interesting to me at times is seeing, you know, on Facebook where it'll pull up something from 9 years ago. And sometimes you read something you wrote, whether it be in a journal or whatever, I guess it has the same effect, but you read something and you're like, fuck, I should have listened to myself 9 years ago because I'm still doing the same shit. Or sometimes you might look at it and go, man, that was actually, considering how young I was, that was actually a pretty profound idea or statement that I made. And at times I just feel like maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's interesting to kind of look back at times and see where you have gone, if you have, hopefully you have, and progressed. And I feel like the industry at times preys on those that are younger because they don't have real life experiences yet to draw from to make informed decisions. And I guess that's kind of maybe where the question stems from, is just kind of thinking more of it like that of, you know, how has it changed you? How have you noticeably, why can't I come up with that word? How have you noticed that it has changed you in a very noticeable way, I guess? Because I think that's interesting.
There's a few parts to it, but again, going back to the song we just released, when it says I'm from the Midwest, industry ain't make me, I'm not who they want me to be, that's why they hate me. I was going to say something funny, but it was like a Slipknot lyric. They can only destroy what they create. So when the way that you talk about it, I don't agree with the way you say it, because yes, the industry will hunt and kill anyone that lets it. But you don't blame that. Milli Vanilli had problems. And you're saying the same thing, but there's a little difference, because you're willing, the idea, I feel like you were kind of on the right path when you say, you know, you check your Facebook and 9 years ago you learned from it. And I have a little talking piece about it, about reading the same book you've already read, because sometimes the book reads you, and you'll find things in there that you didn't find last time. And each time you read it will be a new time, because you're a new person if you read it with a little bit of time between it. So I don't think anyone talks about it because it's such a subjective thing, to where when I say I'm glad when people get ripped off because it's Darwinism, part of me believes that when an industry takes advantage of you, you let it happen. It's not a rape, you know, like no one is forcing you to do anything. Because you overlooked maybe something in a contract, and because you were desperate, these are your errors. They're the industry trying to get one over, you know what I mean? Like, I live in the streets, everyone tries to get over on you on everything, because they're trying to get whatever it is for themselves. That's not a personal thing. The industry is innate. It's an object. That doesn't even exist. So to anthropomorphize it like it's a character that's evil, it doesn't make any sense, because it's an inanimate object. It doesn't have a personality, a characteristic. It's just as honorable as it is dishonorable. There's just as many people singing its praises that are cursing it. I don't think people talk about it because they have to go back and identify, I did that because I was desperate. I did that because I was ignorant. I did that because I didn't know better. I let this person take advantage of me because I wouldn't stick up for myself. I did this because I had no other thing to do in my life. I had no other options. That is also your fault. I don't sing the industry's praises. I couldn't give a fuck less if it ended tomorrow, but I don't like shouldering, I don't like foregoing accountability, because when you make it not your fault, you'll never fix it. You become it becomes your master, essentially, that has dominion over you. And that's just that. You know, I'm reminded of like stupid stories like the power lifter that blames everything on genes. Well, yes, if you blame the invisible God that is genes, that cannot be defeated and never will be defeated, you will always lose. And I think that is the diagnosis of today. I think everything in this world today is a witch hunt. all of these things that people are after, whether it be in news, current events, modern media, anything. What they've done is create an invisible boogeyman that can't be defined, seen, heard, or defeated. It can only be interpreted as whatever and battled by the good guys. And of course, the bad guys are all for the invisible boogeyman that can't be defined. And one side's on one side and the other's on the other. But I think it's an invisible enemy. When people say the industry, more times than not, you're talking about a bad stigma or an evil connotation. It's never just an indifferent, the industry. It's always the evil industry. And I think that's some sissy shit. I hear grown fucking men that are millionaires sit around online talking about how the industry's taking advantage of X, Y, and Z, and it's so hard out here. And I just think you're a pussy. Maybe I'm not a good person, but have some accountability. If someone took advantage of you, yes, guess what? They're going to do it again. Someone else will take advantage of you in life. Just recognize it and don't let it happen again. And then, it'll happen again, and then you'll learn from that one and become a little bit wiser, and then it'll happen again. That's how life works. Everyone takes advantage of everyone. There are some mutual relationships, there's some parasitic relationships. There are all different types of relationships, but I don't like the blame game. I don't like what I call the undefinable. It just feels like a witch hunt. You're creating an enemy that you can't see, hear, or define, and that no one agrees on as well. The strange things about these invisible, like, boogeymen things, like the industry, is when you ask 6 different people to define the industry, you get 6 subjective experiences, none of which have anything in common. Most of which are, I have no experience with the industry besides as a consumer or a fan. So what do you do with that person?
Right.
98% of people, by the way, you have one person creating a record that, millions of people listen to. That's not a good teeter-totter kind of thing. So I just, I stay away from the witch hunts, I guess.
I think that's as good of any, really, as a place to kind of wrap this up. I feel like I could bullshit with you for a while longer, but I know I've taken up a lot of your time already. Just want to say thank you for taking the time to chat. Really excited for everyone to hear the record, which, as of when we're talking, comes out tomorrow. Any last thoughts or anything before we end?
I've done enough damage.
Well, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
That fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're gonna see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're gonna see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.